We like to drink beer, a lot of it. After a long night of drinking and talking crime and conspiracies, there's nothing that wakes us up and gets us ready to start the day better than Just Brew coffee. With a great selection of roast levels to choose from, you're guaranteed to find one that suits your style. Small batch roasted to highlight the unique features of each coffee bean, Just Brew coffee caters to both casual and hardcore coffee drinkers alike. Since 2010, Just Brew Coffee has worked tirelessly to perfect the roasting process and technique, which has resulted in seriously delicious, always flavorful, and never bitter tasting coffee. If you're already drinking JBC, raise your mug. If you're not, raise your standards. Check them out in social media and remember, they roast, you just brew. Check out their new online store at youjustbrew.com and up your coffee game today. Use code NECRO15 to receive 15% off your order of 2 pounds or more.
The Bell Witch sure is a bitch, picking on a Tennessean family for over 11 years, making their lives a living hell. Today's story focuses on the Bell Witch and the strange hauntings and interactions she had with the Bell family and visitors to their home. She promised to bring death to the family. Did she follow through? We'll also discuss 12-year-olds marrying and the future president that was also paid a visit by the Bell Witch. I'm Mike.
I'm Ian.
And I'm Dave. If you thought Jack Daniels was the most famous spirit from Tennessee, stick around. This bewitching tale of terror just might change your mind. This is Necronomipod.
Well, the case involves an early pioneer family in northern Middle Tennessee who experienced some type of visitation from an entity that they could not see but hear. And it began with raps on the walls outside the house, then spread into the house with the sounds of chains being dragged across the floor, stones being dropped on the roof, and it just went downhill from there. The children complained of their bed covers being pulled back, and by the winter of 1817, the children were even being slapped.
All right, so we're back at it after two straight episodes of serial killers. We're mixing things up a little bit here. We haven't quite tiptoed into the spooky in a little while. When was the last episode we did that was ghostly?
Gosh, I don't know.
And,
who was the dude?
Kyle Odom?
No,
he just thought aliens
he
were
was
jerking
aliens.
him off.
The dude, the Exorcism, Michael Taylor.
Oh, yeah.
That was way back.
Like the 98-year-old man who Ian claims was 31 in that picture.
He tore his wife's whole face apart.
Yeah, and tore the poodle apart.
Oh, yeah, the poodle.
Yeah.
Because what's that girl, that aspiring cult leader wouldn't fuck him.
Yeah,
right.
the cute cult leader.
Yeah.
Well, if you haven't heard The Exorcism of Michael Taylor, go back and check that episode out, because that was a hoot. And today we're back at it, little creepy ghost stories today.
Right. Back in the world of the spooky.
Well, let's just jump right in.
All right. So in the early 1800s, John Bell Sr. and his wife Lucy relocated the family from North Carolina to the Red River area of Tennessee, which would later become Adams, Tennessee.
So it's like northwest of Nashville, pretty close to the Kentucky line.
Okay. John bought a large house, and over the years he continued to purchase land until he owned a total of 328 acres. I feel like that's a lot for back then.
Pretty good sized farm, right?
Yeah.
I think he's doing all right. Yeah. Sure. How many acres did you have back then, Dave?
I had 40 acres and a mule. They gave him away. Yeah, when we were moving westward across this great land of ours, Manifest Destiny.
He used most.
Well said.
Me and Daniel Boone out on the frontier. It was awesome.
You were out there with Lewis and Clark?
He used most of this land to plant crops and was made an elder of the Red River Baptist Church.
Sounds great.
Sounds pretty important.
Elder? I mean, come on.
So the haunting began sometime in 1817 when John Bell Sr. was out hunting on his property. John saw a creature sitting in between two rows of corn. And at first he thought it was a dog, but as he got closer to it, he said it looked like it had the body of a dog with the head of a rabbit and was very large.
That sounds fucking creepy.
Yeah.
Sounds like vaguely satanic.
Yeah.
You know, those anamorphic kind of creatures.
Yeah.
And isn't that a little bit Mothman-esque with what people saw? Or am I mixing that up?
This haunting kind of starts a lot similar to how Skinwalker Ranch started.
Okay.
Because
with what they saw.
Tom Gorman saw the huge wolf.
That's right.
And as soon as he saw it, then shit just got wild after that.
Yeah. If you ever see a creepy looking animal, just know shit's going to get worse from there.
Just like Tom Gorman, he fired a shot at the creature, but it just vanished into thin air. Said he was startled by the encounter, but he just kind of shrugged it off and went about his business.
Oh, well.
It happens.
Yeah. Well, the other thing, too, when I was reading stuff on this is like a lot of these areas, this was like new area for a lot of people. So they saw animals sometimes that they weren't used to seeing in some of these places.
So they just thought the dog with the rabbit head, they're like, oh, that just lives here. Right. So we got to get used to those.
Makes sense, I guess.
Yeah.
Because it's out on the frontier.
Right. Well, and then back in the, I mean, I know the Jersey Devil was...
Maybe that's what I was thinking of, the Jersey Devil.
Yeah, that was just a clusterfuck
of like the different animal parts.
Yeah. But like, I can't remember what year it was. It was after this where they put the Jersey Devil in one of those sideshow things. But then remember they used a kangaroo, and everybody's like, we never seen a fucking kangaroo before, so they didn't know any better.
That would be creepy. If you had never seen a kangaroo before, and then you see that fucking Nick Diaz looking thing coming at you.
Well, kangaroos come from that penal colony, Australia, right?
Boy. You're not making friends again.
The land of convicts and kangaroos.
You pissed off a whole continent with that comment.
Look, Australia derived from convicts from England. Is that not correct?
I know them today to be very fine, upstanding people.
I'm not saying I don't love them today, but history's history. It was a penal colony.
Have you ever seen Crocodile Dundee? They're swell individuals.
That's a knife. That's not a knife.
Crocodile Dave.
Good day.
I think he just left. That was him saying bye.
That's not a knife. Am I closer? It's a hard accent for me.
Is that a line from the movie?
Yeah.
I don't remember that movie very well.
No,
Probably.
Somebody, the guy with the big knife tries to rob him. And he pulls out his own much larger knife. This is a knife.
I think you got the accent down.
Around the same time, his son Drew and daughter Betsy also claimed to have seen strange animals on their property, like abnormally large birds and more of
like Big Bird?
Yeah, sure. I mean, could be.
Can you imagine if you fucking saw a big bird
And
you
Just
didn't know what
walking
it
out
was?
on the frontier.
Yeah. That would be terrifying.
That'd be
It's
terrifying.
like an acid nightmare.
Right? Like the face doesn't move. It's just constantly smiling and big eyes looking at you.
You take that, remember the movie The Witch? You take that and replace the goat and like Photoshop in Big Bird walking around and see if the movie's scary still.
What was that puppet movie we talked about watching?
Oh God.
That you showed us the trailer
Oh
for?
yeah,
Dave?
Something
that was like the first movie of what's his name, the guy that did Lord of the Rings.
which is ridiculous. God did that.
The somethings, the Weeble. It's not the Weebles.
Yeah, it was something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
One day for Patreon.
The Feebles. Meet the Feebles?
For
That what it's called?
Patreon, we'll
Meet the
do
Feebles.
a watch along for that. Because that just looked ridiculous.
Oh, yeah.
But like we were saying, they just when they saw this big birds and stuff and the dog, they just chalked it up to they're new to the area and they were animals that they never saw, they had never seen before. Around the same time as seeing the strange animals, Betsy said she saw a woman walking through the property. When Betsy caught up to this woman, tried to speak to her, the woman just vanished into thin air.
Well, that's scary, I guess.
That would be spooky.
Again, very Skinwalker-esque.
Yeah. The family started to hear sounds outside of the cabin at night. They reported hearing sounds like something that was on the roof and was knocking from the outside. They couldn't figure out what was making the sounds, but soon after, the phenomenon made its way inside their cabin. It started off small with what they described as hearing a rat gnawing on bedposts.
That would fucking terrify me more than a goddamn knocking.
Ugh.
If there was a rat under my bed gnawing at the bed.
Different times, I guess.
Plus, just being out on hundreds of acres all by yourself makes it 100 times scarier.
Yeah.
Nothing around.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. It said they would light a candle to look for a rat, but there was nothing there and no signs of damage. That stresses me out too, not being able just to flick on a light. You gotta look for a fucking candle to light, pitch darkness.
Yeah.
Shit. And there's
Couldn't
nothing there.
couldn't they just use the flashlight setting on their iPhones? Oh, because they couldn't charge them because there was no electricity.
So as this continued to happen every night, the family started to communicate with whatever was going on. They found that when asking pretty basic questions, they would receive answers from the knocks, like 1 knock for yes, 2 knocks for no. And like with all poltergeist hauntings, communicating with the energy or whatever it is would theoretically just make it stronger over time. That's kind of what seems to go on in this story.
According to who?
What do you mean? Like poltergeist stuff?
Yeah. Like when you say it makes them stronger over time.
It just seems like that's from all like
the norm for these cases.
Like the Enfield poltergeist, as they kept interacting with it, it got stronger over time. And
like
then
you're lending credence to it, and
you're feeding the.
All right, yeah.
It's kind of the same thing as the same idea of a tulpa.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Men in Black could have potentially been a tulpa, and people being scared, you're feeding the tulpa so it gets stronger.
Don't feed the tulpas, Dave.
Remember that one show we did on that experiment up in Canada, and they created that tulpa. They wrote the backstory. Like, that stuff was nuts.
That's the same thing. Yeah, the Philip experiment.
covered
the
this?
Philip experiment. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good thing we're not doing a trivia against Mike tonight because I have no recollection of that. What
I
episode
cannot
was that
wait to
in?
do trivia against Mike.
Well, you don't get to.
I get to write the questions.
Oh, yeah.
The Zozo one. Remember we talked about how they made up their own ghost? They wanted to see if they could
That's
get it
right.
stronger.
Okay.
And there's that video of the table fucking rolling around the room and shit.
Yes.
It was nuts.
I forgot about the whole Zozo episode. I'm going to have to go back and listen to that one in the archives.
So
That's
that's like
gonna be-
And I'm also going to listen to Betty and Barney Hill and Art Bell.
You better listen to all of them because they're going to be trivia questions.
do your homework.
We had listeners message us that they were going back to listen to Study Up so they could whoop on me in the trivia.
Well, delete the episode and then re-download it so we get counted twice if you're going to do that. We need the downloads.
We still can't make the fucking Apple charts.
Yeah.
Sore subject for Ian.
So as time went on, this energy would eventually gain a voice. This disembodied voice started faint, like kind of raspy, like almost like a whisper, but they couldn't understand what it was saying.
I'm the Bell Witch.
As they continued to ask questions through knocks and encourage this voice to talk clearer, one night they decided to ask it a more specific question, and they said, "Who are you and what do you want?" And the voice replied, still faint but strong enough so they could understand.
I am a spirit. I was once very happy, but have been disturbed.
I think that witch used to smoke. That's good. I like
So
it.
is it supposed to be a woman's voice?
Yeah,
Like they clearly understood it as a woman?
that it was
Okay.
a woman, yeah.
If it was a man, wouldn't it have been a warlock?
That's what I was going to say.
Warlock.
Isn't that what's a male witch?
A warlock.
Oh, is it really? I don't know.
So if it's a raspy woman, like I picture it from, do you remember Throw Mama from the Train?
I didn't understand a
way
word you
before
just
you
said.
guys.
Yeah.
The Danny DeVito movie, Throw Mama from the Train?
I've not seen that.
All right, never mind then.
I picture with the voice you just did now, Marge Simpson's sisters.
Yeah.
The smoking. And,
Homer.
yeah. It's like Annalise, but like more smoker and more human and not so much demonic.
All right, we can live with that.
Yeah.
That's what I've built in my head.
Sure. Maybe you can try your Wizard of Oz witch at the next time it's time to read one.
We're just going to keep switching off here. Be very consistent with the storyline, but we'll give it a shot.
So things continue to escalate with this energy, now being able to physically interact with people and objects. John's children started having their hair pulled, being pinched, and the covers being pulled off their beds while they were sleeping. And it was all by just some invisible force.
How the fuck do you even go to sleep with shit like that going on?
That's what I was thinking throughout reading all of this, and the story is, how are people going to sleep?
Well, everything that I read, that they were scared. Like all the accounts said that they were super scared by this.
I guess you're going to fall asleep at some point if you're tired enough and you're staying up long enough.
Yeah.
I just don't know how you can live in terror like that.
There probably wasn't many options to just go move back then either.
Yeah, you're right. What are you going to do?
So the family was scared and not getting much sleep, but for about a year, John kept this whole thing a secret.
A year.
In fear of being ridiculed by the community. Once the activity was able to interact physically with the family, John decided that was it. It was time to ask for help from someone because he wanted it to stop.
Did he call that old lady from Poltergeist?
No.
I'm assuming he called the Ghostbusters, right?
Yeah. He called Peter Venkman and
yeah. No, he called those two the husband and wife couple that were like chasing all the ghost stories. The ones you don't like.
God damn it, what's their name?
I can't. I don't. That's why I didn't say their name. I didn't remember.
The Warrens.
Yeah, Ed and Lorraine Warren.
Yeah, he called Ed and Lorraine Warren.
Fucking crooks.
They'd have been all over this, though.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
They'd have been with a little tent in the front yard.
Not the hot Vera Farmiga
No.
Warren lady, the real one.
Seriously,
they would have.
They did some casting there.
They would have claimed it for themselves and then sold it to Warner Brothers. And John decided that the best place to start was to go to their good friends James and Jane Johnston. The Bells confided in them and told them to come over and spend a night in their cabin so they could experience what was going on for themselves. When the Johnstons came over the next night, the activity started as soon as all the candles in the cabin were blown out. They heard the knocking sounds, experienced the sheets being pulled off the beds, and heard the disembodied voice. James Johnston told John that he had no idea what to do about the problem, but that John should not hide this haunting from anyone else so they could possibly find someone to help. And this, when he came public with this started people from all over coming to see the Bell Witch for themselves.
So it seems like there's tons of corroborating eyewitness accounts for this thing. Like more than any other story.
Yeah, there's tons of people that came to see it.
Yeah.
So maybe these people weren't that far off into like the wilderness by themselves. If all of these people were able to just readily come visit them.
Yeah, I mean,
maybe they weren't as secluded as we were making it out to be, and they could have just packed up shop and moved in town to a hotel or whatever and built something new or what, I don't know what their maybe financially they had to just stay there, but
they had it all tied up in the land and
right.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how all that works back then.
Yeah. I just meant, maybe they're not as secluded as we thought if all these people are just able to come out and see them.
Yeah, I'm picturing it like out in the wilderness. Maybe that's not accurate.
Well, as we're about to get to, though, some people had to travel, right?
Yep.
Pretty far to get to them.
So among these visitors was Andrew Jackson, who was a major general during the War of 1812. His victory at New Orleans made him the greatest military hero since George Washington. At this time he served as a territorial governor and then as a senator representing Tennessee from 1823 to 1825. He was also elected the 7th president of the United States in 1828.
Fun fact about Andrew Jackson, 1824 election was the first time ever that the winner of the election did not win the popular vote. John Quincy Adams.
Yeah.
Andrew Jackson won the popular vote, but did not win. And
he pulled some
there
strings
was
behind the
politics
scene, right?
involved, and Quincy Adams got in, and Andrew Jackson was so pissed that for the next 4 years straight, he just campaigned. That's why he left his Senate seat and campaigned from 24 to 28 and then won in 28.
And the 28 campaign was with just where they started all the back and forth with the mudslinging and stories about his wife and all. Like really nasty.
Was that the first time that kind of stuff was
I think
used?
it was.
Well, and
Yeah.
I think, because he was livid.
Total war.
And it's like every campaign that happens now, we always say, well, it's the worst one. This is the worst they've got. This is the worst. Pretty sure back then, these motherfuckers would have just shot each other if they really wanted to. So anyways, Andrew Jackson's here.
So
We won't talk about the Trail of Tears.
After he heard about the Bell Witch, he wanted to see it for himself. So he gathered a group of guys and traveled. And according to legend, as they got close to the Bell farm, one of their wagons got stuck, but it wasn't in the mud. It just seemed like it was just like halted by an unseen force. Jackson's men then checked the wagon wheels for damage, but they couldn't find anything. They whipped their horses, but they refused to budge. The men tried to push it, and that didn't work either. So frustrated, Jackson then exclaimed,
"By the eternal, boys, this is the witch."
To which the
what does that even mean?
By the eternal, like, I do declare.
I don't know.
Maybe it means like for sure.
I guess.
Yeah.
Totally.
And to this, the disembodied female voice replied,
All right, General. Let the wagon move. I'll see you tonight.
That's what I got.
Let's go with that one.
So after the witch said that, the wagon was then freed and the party was able to continue on their journey.
If Andrew Jackson was there, it was a party.
That night, they set up camp and listened to a man who was a self-proclaimed witch slayer or witch hunter. And he told the group stories of how he had hunted and then shot other witches. And according to the legend, Andrew Jackson leaned over and whispered to one of his men,
I bet this fellow is an arrant coward. By the eternal, I do wish the thing would come. I want to see him run.
That's badass. There.
I'm going to start using by the eternal. By the eternal, I do need another beer.
Does it mean like by God? Is that what it means?
It's kind of, maybe.
That must be what it is.
Maybe. I tried Googling it. I can't find it. If you can't find it on Google, I'm not
Is it
sure
like
it
an
ever
old
existed.
term for God, the eternal?
It kind of sounds like it would make sense.
Makes sense.
So suddenly the group heard light scratching sounds. At the same time, the female voice from earlier said,
Is it me again, or you want to give it a shot?
You want to go back and forth? What do you want to do?
Go ahead. Go, your turn. We'll do dueling witches.
All right, General. I am at hand and ready for business.
the voice then demanded the witch hunter shoot, but when he tried to fire his gun, it didn't work. His gun was then struck by an unseen force. As he twisted around, he shouted that something was sticking painful pins into him, and then he yelled out something had him by the nose.
Nyek, nyek, nyek. This sounds like a Three Stooges episode.
It's like dry. Can you imagine the guy just like running? You can't see anything, but he's getting pulled by his nose.
Oh, wise guy witch hunter, eh?
Yeah.
It's too bad the witch wasn't a Native American. Then Andy Jackson could have just slaughtered it right there on the spot, right?
Would have. He'd have done it.
So as this man ran away, the witch chimed in again.
How the devil did run and beg. I bet he won't come through here again with his old horse pistol to shoot me.
All right, I think I declare you the winner and the witch off. And you can take it from here on out.
That's not easy to do.
I like your witch voice.
The group then heard,
I guess that's fun enough for tonight, General. And you can go to bed now. I will come tomorrow night and show you another rascal in this crowd.
That's great.
It's said that after this, Jackson wanted to stay, but his men were too scared, so he agreed to leave, and they went back to Nashville. So they never even made it to the farm or to their cabin, whatever. The witch stopped them there.
God, if he would have stayed, maybe no 7th President Andrew Jackson. Quincy Adams wins again.
Boom. The course of America has changed forever.
Could be.
So back at the Bell cabin, the witch started to state who it was there for. It said Old Jack, which is what it called John Bell, and said it would eventually kill him before leaving. It also had it out for John's daughter, Betsy, who was starting to become the main focus of the physical attacks. They couldn't figure out why this entity would be after John and Betsy specifically, because there was nothing necessarily, they didn't do anything in their in their lives or in the past or anything to wouldn't bring about any negative energy on them or, any bad karma.
They're just good people.
Right. They continue to ask this thing what it was and where it was from, but then they asked how it was disturbed and why it was unhappy, and it replied,
I am a spirit of a person who was buried in the woods nearby, and the grave has been disturbed. My bones disinterred and scattered. One of my teeth was lost under the house, and I am here looking for this tooth.
It's like the anti-tooth fairy.
That would be pretty freaky.
That would be. I mean, just thinking. It is pretty spooky.
It is.
Just hear a voice telling you shit like that.
So we think they're literally hearing this voice, and it's discernible what this voice is saying. It's crazy.
That's what the story says. Because this one is just like, it's just like the voice is just producing itself out of thin air. But like in the Enfield poltergeist, it seemed like it was coming out of Janet. Remember, because they were accusing her of ventriloquism and stuff like that.
But none of them could look at her while she was making it. But she put water in her mouth and was able to do it. Yeah.
It's interesting with this whole tooth thing because according to the accounts of this, when they were doing work around the property, one of the bellboys found some human bones and brought them into the house. And
those fucking bones out of the house, dude.
Bringing human remains in here.
Those in?
It was said that he dropped a jawbone from these remains, and one of the teeth fell down into the floorboards.
The jawbone's connected to the floorboard.
Great, now I got human bone living under our house.
So, after they were told about this from the entity about the tooth, they tried looking for it, but couldn't find it. And I guess they were thinking if they could get that tooth out of there, then.
Yeah. Do we know if it was a cuspid, incisor? Do we have any of that information?
I don't even think they had the information of that back then.
This story could make sense, but this entity seemed to answer questions differently depending on who was asking the questions, and would give you the impression of a poltergeist just trying to cause trouble and confusion. When a man named Reverend James Gunn asked what it was, it said,
I am the spirit of an early immigrant who brought a large sum of money and buried my treasure of safekeeping until needed. In the meanwhile, I died without divulging the secret, and I have returned in the spirit with the purpose of making known the hiding place. And I want Betsy Bell to have the money.
Common didn't feel very witchy.
Oh, man.
Voices
This is like a witch with multiple personality disorder.
The entity gave them the details on where to find the treasure and said it was at the back of John Bell's land, or the back corner of John Bell's land. They decided to go out and search for this treasure, and they worked all day digging, but never found anything. And when they came back to the cabin at night, this disembodied voice was laughing at them and detailing everything that they did throughout the day, looking for the treasure, like mocking them.
The witch is trolling now. This is great.
You stupid fuckers!
I'd imagine something like that.
This is the best part of the story right here. That's fucking great.
Someone's mocking you. You can't even see them to like go swing at them or something.
What are you, an idiot?
Oh, that's funny.
So around this time, the entity claimed it was Kate Batts' witch, and people just started gradually calling the entity Kate. Going through all the accounts and things, I think this was just another detail of this thing threw out just to cause confusion. The name just stuck because people could now just give a name to it.
So some of the documentary videos I was watching, some of the stories claim that John Bell was having an affair with Kate Batts. And the other one said that maybe he murdered Kate Batts. So there's...
And were those the bones that the boy found?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
So there's lots of theories out there. It's a whole big deal down in Adams, Tennessee.
I mean, you can go on haunted tours and shit down there.
So everyone's got all these different theories and stuff.
She was married or murdered and then buried. And
Could
then
be.
her descendant, Billy Bats, was also murdered and buried.
Billy Bats. Just shine my shoes. Get your shine kits.
You go home and get your fucking shine box.
That's great.
So, like you were saying, I mean, Kate Batts was a real person that lived in the area. And it said that she wasn't a common person or a common woman for the time. She was married to a man that was handicapped and unable to work, so she took over their family farm and did all the day-to-day stuff.
Makes sense, maybe, that she was getting dick from John Bell. Right?
She wasn't getting it at home. She'd go get it somewhere else. So she was uncommon just simply because she was running the show.
Yeah. She was just an independent woman that it was said that she had a really good sense of humor, and that was really all that was different about her.
Yeah, because I think women probably never spoke out of turn back then, and just kind of followed the lead of their husbands. So for her to run the house and be making jokes and being funny, it was uncommon.
So back then, witches were could be seen as two things: a blanket term for people who were different. Or a witch could be something that a person conjured up to do their bidding, like a tulpa. So if you believe this story, this would be like the entity associating itself with Kate Batts based on the fact that it knew she was different and people would believe that she would be a witch. And this isn't the only instance of the entity knowing things about the community. A lot of times when people would come to experience it, it would start talking about local gossip and tell these people things about themselves.
Just like the demons that possessed Annalise, and they were talking about the German priests from all over the country.
That's right.
Yep.
They knew about all those things that they shouldn't have known.
Yeah, she had like the fuck do I want to say? I don't know what I want to say, but she had all those. She had Hitler.
Didn't
she had some heavy hitters, and then this random fucking German priest
that lived, down the road from her.
It was further than down the road.
It was like 200 miles away.
And back then, that's forever away. Couldn't just put it up as their AOL Instant Messenger or whatever.
Ew.
Whatever kids use these days.
So, aside from being insistent on eventually killing John Bell Sr., the entity started to make its mission to prevent Betsy Bell from marrying her longtime boyfriend, Joshua Gardner. Betsy and Joshua went to school together, and it sounded just like they were head over heels for each other.
Right.
And then I had to keep in mind that they were only 11 and 12 years old at the time, and the life expectancy wasn't great, so
they started earlier.
Yeah.
Midlife crisis right about then.
People only live to what, like 30 in their 30s?
Yeah, what if you had to marry your girlfriend when you're 11 years old? You guys would still be married to Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair action figures, I think.
Wow.
It's roast mode.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. Might have been Shawn Michaels by then. Now it's 12.
The what do you call them? What were the stuffed animals?
The wrestling buddies.
Yeah.
The pillows.
They're proving my point for me, fans.
I still got all those toys somewhere.
I do not have my Macho Man wrestling buddy anymore.
I don't know if I have the wrestling buddies anymore. I think over the years the dogs ate all those, but all the action figures, I still got all those.
I think they probably got soaked with too much semen and they had to be thrown away. It's more likely what happened.
Whatever, it still counts.
Step into a mic jizz. Oh, yeah.
Step into a mic jizz.
So also around this time of trying to derail Betty's love life, the entity just kept growing stronger. Not only did it seem to know everything that was going on around it, including things that it shouldn't know, but now it was able to mimic the voices of people that were speaking to it.
All right, now it's really getting crazy.
Yeah. With so many visitors coming to see it for themselves, naturally people started to accuse Betsy of ventriloquism. So then John Johnston, the son of James Johnston, came up with a plan to test Betsy. He asked the witch something that only the Johnston family would have known to try and trip up Betsy, and the question was, what would my Dutch step-grandmother, who lived back in North Carolina, say to the slaves when they didn't do work right? And the entity replied, "Hut tut, what has happened now?" So
that's pretty specific, I think.
Yeah. In another instance of these tests, an Englishman showed up to try and debunk this thing. While he was talking to the Bells about his family from over in England, the entity started to mimic their voices. So this man stayed the night to investigate, and that night the entity woke him up to the voices of his own parents. The Englishman quickly left that morning and later wrote to the Bell family that the entity had visited his family in England and also apologized for his skepticism.
It just gets crazier and crazier.
Yeah.
Yeah, so now this thing.
So now the witch is there overseas.
Yeah.
Did it take a ship over there? How did it get there? Did it fly on its broomstick?
Dun, 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 dun.
Shortly after this, another man who was only recorded as being named Detective Williams showed up to try and debunk the case. The detective didn't believe in the paranormal at all and thought for sure that he would be able to figure it out. John Sr. allowed him to stay at their cabin, and after a day of nothing happening, this Detective Williams started to get frustrated and accused the Bells of lying, and it sounded like he was being a real dickhead about it, and John Sr. was getting to the point of throwing him out. And as he was getting ready to throw him out, the entity spoke up and said,
No, you don't, old Jack. Let him stay. I will attend to this gentleman and satisfy that he is not as smart as he thinks.
That's a super creepy. That would be super creepy.
Yeah, dude.
So
Well, imagine, if you're that that detective, and there's been nothing happening, all of a sudden that voice comes out.
you're sitting there talking shit.
Out of nowhere, just out of thin air.
Right.
Tells you you're not as smart as, or it's going to show you you're not as smart as you think.
Like
You just did. Bye.
Yeah, I'm opening the door and getting the fuck out.
See ya.
So this detective decided to stay another night, and when they all went to sleep, he woke up to being held down by an unseen force. It said that the entity started attacking him, leaving scratches and red marks on him as he was yelling out for help. John Sr. came in to help him, and the detective sat up with a candle lit the rest of the night, being taunted by the entity, asking him stuff like if he was happy how his investigation had turned out. And as soon as the sun came up, he was out of there.
Yeah,
This witch loves talking shit.
Yeah.
Such a troll.
Right? Like we were saying before, the witch said it was going to kill John Sr. eventually. He fell ill sometime in December of 1820, and he just continued to get worse. For a while, all he was able to do is just get out of bed and make breakfast for the family. He was being attended to by a man named Dr. Hobson, who would bring him vials of medicine to heal him. I was just trying to think of that, like what the medicine would...
like mercury or something. Yeah, exactly.
Like some shit that would just make him worse.
Yeah, cocaine, heroin mixed with mercury. It's fucking quacks back then.
After every time John Sr. was given medicine, the witch would say,
That is of no use. I'm going to kill him.
I keep thinking I'm done with this witch voice, and it keeps coming back.
on December 19th, 1820, John Sr. couldn't make it out of bed even to make breakfast at that point. When one of his sons went over to the vials of medicine that Dr. Hobson had left, he found they were gone, and all that was left was one vial of a smoky brown liquid. They had no idea what this stuff was, so they tested it out on their cat. The cat got sick and died pretty quick after being given the liquid.
They slayed that pussy.
As they were trying to make sense of what was going on, the witch said,
He will never get up. I did it.
and John Sr. never got up again, and shortly after died.
Damn, that witch was right.
Yep.
I think the worst trolling of all is right here.
Oh, yeah. So at John Bell Sr.'s funeral, it was one of the largest ever held in Robertson County, Tennessee. As the family and friends began leaving the graveyard, the witch just The witch laughed loudly and began singing a song about a bottle of brandy. And according to legend, that she didn't stop singing until every last person left the graveyard.
So it's the largest funeral in that whole area, and every one of these people heard this witch singing at the funeral out of nowhere.
That's what the legend says.
Well, in all fairness, it's still probably like 16 people.
That's
I mean, let's be realistic here.
It was their friends, the Johnstons, and a couple other families.
Yeah.
Can't believe how many people turned out.
Andrew Jackson sure wasn't coming back for that.
So with the witch now claiming to have killed John Sr., the family took its threats a little more serious.
Now they're taking it serious.
Throughout the whole haunting, the witch insisted that Betsy not marrying Joshua Gardner. So in April of 1821, Betsy broke off her engagement to Joshua, and the witch just kind of eased up on tormenting her.
She's like, yeah, I'm 11. I'm not marrying you. I don't want to go with you anymore.
And then the witch is like, all right, good. Moving on.
Yeah, I don't understand what was so important about this Joshua Gardner guy. I couldn't find anything.
He must have been a real bad seed.
Something, I don't know.
I don't think he had any seed yet.
No, he planted them all. He was a gardener.
You know who would have been okay with this arrangement was David Berg. This is what he was talking about in the Mo letters, man.
Oh, he loved this sort of thing.
He cited this kind of shit, justifying his
biblical, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So also in April of 1821, the entity visited John's widow, Lucy, and told her it would return again in 7 years. The witch is said to have returned in 1828 as promised. Most of its visit centered around John Bell Jr., where the witch discussed things like the meaning of life, civilizations.
A voice out of nowhere is discussing the meaning of life.
Just telling you what the witch was saying. Christianity and the need for a mass spiritual reawakening.
All of a sudden, this cultured witch just
it's-
shows up and wants to sit down and talk and save the world.
And it made predictions about stuff, and I guess it nearly it had a nearly accurate prediction of how the Civil War would play out. The witch left after 3 weeks, promising to visit John Bell's most direct descendant in 107 years. The year would have been 1935, and the closest living direct descendant of John Bell at that time was Nashville physician Dr. Charles Bailey Bell. Dr. Bell wrote a book about the witch that was published in 1934, and no follow-up to the book was ever published, and Dr. Bell died in 1945. And that's the last.
That's the Bell Witch, huh?
That's the last we know of the witch. But, I mean, the last of the legend. I mean, that area is still considered haunted, and you can take haunted tours and go down to that cave and stuff.
From what I read, the first book about this was written in 1894, based on the old legends and stuff. So that was 75 years after the fact.
Yeah.
So, it's just like the Bible, written hundreds of years later.
Yeah, it's all legend.
Yeah, right. But for all of these people to have heard this and all these eyewitness accounts, it's got to be the most, the haunting, at least in this country, with the most eyewitness accounts associated to it.
Yeah, I like all the quotes from the witch. They're just creepy.
Just random stuff.
Yeah.
Or did this guy just make it up to sell books?
But then how did he fake it for all these different people? Or, I mean, because like the Johnstons got out, like everyone got out alive, right? So that there were the actual people here, unless you think he just made those people.
I'm just saying, it's when you write something 75 years later.
Oh, I see what you mean.
I mean, that's like us writing a book on World War II just by word of mouth stories.
Right.
How accurate is that going to be?
I thought you were talking that from the standpoint of John Bell was making all this up.
Oh, no.
Yeah, no. You're talking much later. The Nashville physician.
Oh, yeah, Dr. Charles
Bailey Bell.
Yeah.
So I did come across this show on A&E called Cursed the Bell Witch.
Yeah.
And I guess it's about this guy who's a descendant of John Bell. Like, currently he's an ex-cop, military guy. And apparently there's a further curse associated with this where the firstborn male of every generation, meets a tragic end. So he's attempting to uncover the basis of the curse because his son is 14 and he'll be subject to the curse next, and he wants to save him.
Is this
It's
a
so
reality
fucking
show?
ridiculous. Yeah, it's these guys down in Tennessee walking around and like
Who shows this?
it's on A&E.
A&E has a lot of jackass ghosts.
So they start out at Kate Batt's grave, and they have like heat-seeking infrared cameras and stuff, and just what was that? What was that? And like they hear something when they're in the woods, and they run back, and someone broke their tail light out. It's like, well, we would have heard someone if they were back here. Just nonsense. But
How many episodes of this did you watch?
I watched a couple minutes of some of them. I guess there's 5 episodes. So it looks like it was about 3 years ago.
Were they getting all aggressive with it, like all those ghosts?
Oh yeah,
Ghost
for
shows
sure.
too?
Oh yeah.
I never understood that about ghost shows, and like, wouldn't you think a ghost would be more inclined to talk to you if you were being nice to it instead of like going in there?
Like,
like,
so hostile.
hey, come out and see me, go.
When they found like this homemade voodoo thing stuck in the trees in the woods, and then they took it and went and met a witch in Nashville, and I believe she burned it and scattered the ashes. It's ridiculous. Yeah.
Must see TV.
It is definitely not must see.
Maybe that's
TV.
why there's only 5 episodes. It wasn't picked up for a second.
No season 2.
Yeah.
I wonder whatever happened to the kid.
So he's probably 17 now. He's probably dead.
By now, she got him. All right, Ian, you got anything else on the Bell Witch?
Nope, nothing on the Bell Witch.
Dave, you got anything else you want to add on the Bell Witch?
No.
No season 2 of the documentary coming out on A&E.
Not sure I'm buying the Bell Witch, but it's a creepy story.
Yeah.
I like
It is.
witch stuff. Like
This was a fun story, I thought.
it is really fun. Like that movie, The Witch. Did you like that movie?
That's on Netflix, right? Or am I thinking
It
of
is
something
a couple
else?
years ago. Like a family like this, like out on the frontier.
Yeah.
It was fucking creepy,
Yeah.
man, with all the satanic ghost shit. I love that stuff.
Yeah, it's cool.
I'm gonna assume, Mike, you've never seen that.
I have not seen that.
Okay.
But I would watch that.
It's pretty good.
I would watch it. Ian, what shout outs we got?
For iTunes, the only one I have tonight is A Chair Too Squeaky. Thank you for the awesome review.
Hell yeah, 5 stars. Dave, what do we got? Any shout outs for the social medias?
On Instagram, Heather Marsh, and on Twitter, IWRuss387.
Boom.
Thanks
there
for
we
listening.
go. Heather's going to be stoked with that one. She was ready to go for that shout out.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. We are on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Necronomipod. We are now on Patreon. I'm sure you guys have seen the posts. We've discussed it on here. Patreon.com/Necronomipod. Check it out. $5 a month subscription. You can become a patron. You're going to get 3 bonus episodes a month. You're going to get a private Discord to chat with us, discount to merchandise at the Necronomipod store. What else did we say? Anything else?
No.
It's already quite a bargain.
Yeah, I couldn't remember if I missed anything.
I can't think of a better bargain on the planet.
We're going to give you the 3 bonus shows, private chat room with us, should you want to use it, and some discounts.
I think we did say one lucky subscriber we would send out Mike to give him a rim job.
Oh, that too. Yeah. We'll just do a random drawing at some point. So, patreon.com/Necronomipod. Check it out. We would love to have you as a subscriber and give you plenty of awesome bonus content.
Yeah, and thank you to everybody that's signed up so far.
Yeah, appreciate
cool.
it.
Yeah, it's been awesome.
Especially a couple that thought we deserved more than $5.
Even better.
My personal heroes.
All right, you guys ready for a cool down beer?
Cheers.
Yep.